Welcome to the 27, the podcast where one teacher talks with three students about the MCU. I'm that teacher, Mr. McCaughey, and joining us today to talk about episodes 3 and 4 of Moon Knight are three students who bring the world a little joy in podcast form each and every week. We have Wren, we have Angeline, and joining us for the first time, producer, director, dictator, what's the proper word here?
Dictator.
I guess it depends on your interpretation, but we have Alan. Welcome, Alan. How are you?
I am good. How are you, Mr. McCaughey?
Good. It's good to have you on our podcast. You are all joking aside, the producer, the person who helps run Operation Tomato Meter. And I'm going to be honest, Alan, you've done a lot of work with that podcast. There's been many innovations and different things added to the podcast. How have you enjoyed producing a podcast?
The thing is, when I originally wanted to take this, I wanted to focus more on the podcast, the Spotify part, because the video aspect wasn't as engaging. So when it came and we just kept doing what we were doing, Hasana, one of our producers, actually got us a room change. And from there, we sort of decided that we have more freedom to change things up. And so we just started implementing these new changes. And we had like a certain vision in mind and a certain, how do we want to appeal, like what's our messaging.
Yep.
Right. So we wanted to be a little more engaging, kind of like fit for YouTube. Okay. But in a way that retains the film critique.
Yeah, and I mean you've gone to a multi-camera shoot, different kind of setup. It looks great. So good job on that. And we of course have our two hosts. We're back. Yeah. We were on Guardians of the Galaxy before our holiday break. What's with the face, Angeline? How we doing? Now. I think that's a good representation.
That is me inside my agony.
Why is that?
She just came from a shoot.
Yeah, we've been filming for like an hour. It's okay though.
I'm kidding.
Now we don't need to turn this into like a tomato meter therapy session.
Yeah,
however, I mean, I would say that I think there have been like nice improvements made to tomato meter. I've been impressed with them, right? As on our own podcast try to tweak our vision, look at our audience. You know, I feel like tomato meter has done that, and that's something that is for Irene and I that like now we're talking about what can we do. So, do you agree? Disagree? Not like the method in which it's carried out.
I like all jokes aside. I think what you're doing is very.
You're having a hard time saying it. I'm listening.
This is being recorded right now.
Turn around. Honestly, I think like the improvements have been great. Like I definitely think turn around. I definitely think like beforehand, like I could definitely see why viewers there's less.
Why I'm unfireable?
Well, you're graduating in a few months, so it'll be. So with that in mind, Alan, after we're done talking about Moon Knight, I'm gonna ask you to put your producer hat on and think about what we do here up in 515 at the 27 and thoughts you have on our podcast and ways we can improve. Because we're always looking to improve, always looking to make better. You as well as podcast hosts, feel free to share your feedback.
They are amazing. That's what I want to say because...
Look at that.
Because you can keep changing things around. But if the hosts themselves are not engaging, like they're not fun to watch, you guys complement our methods. So... it works really well.
Look at that. I feel like we're making real progress here. This did turn into a little...
I walk out of this room. It's going.
No, positivity.
It's taking a lot of energy for me to say these nice things, but it's okay. It just wants. It's fine.
It's good. We're all about breakthroughs here. Last week that was we turned into a self-help show talking about episodes 1 and 2 of Moon Knight and how sometimes we just need to be listened to when Mark/Steven is talking to the mime type guy, the guy who's like painted gold. Sometimes you just need to be listened to, and sometimes we just need to compliment each other, let each other know how appreciative we are of what she's not buying it. So
this is like family therapy. Okay.
No, but he's right.
So let's jump into what we're here for, and that is episodes 3 and 4 of Moon Knight, which take us into Egypt. Episode 2 left us with Mark/Steven, the like kind of stereotypical like man in agony drinking vodka out of a bottle in a hotel room in Egypt. And this takes us into really the true nature episodes 3 and 4 of everything, from Mark and Steven to a little bit about Layla, a little bit about Harrow as well. And that's where we can kind of kick off here. Just to even talk about these episodes in general. Episode 3 really going into what is happening in Egypt, telling the story of what is there. Episode 4 taking place within the Great Pyramid of Giza, entitled The Tomb, and it tells the story of the Ennead. Am I saying that correctly? With the Egyptian gods and everything that goes along with that. So, let me just start with this. Side note, before we get into this, the very first scene of episode 3, we have this woman who I love who's making this fake ID, this passport, so that Layla can go back. And we learn that Layla is, someone you can get behind, someone who is looking to undo the evils of Harrow, but also just generally the idea of taking these antiquities back from people who have stolen them. So my question that has nothing to do with anything with this woman making the fake ID. Do you know or know of anyone here at Townsend Harris who has a fake ID?
What? This sounds like a cop thing to do.
I'm not asking for names.
we were
know
just getting
of.
somewhere
I'm very. You want to know why? I'll tell you a story. I know of someone, and I'm not naming names, a teenager who used a fake ID and is now facing misdemeanor charges somewhere because a cop caught them using it, and they're charged with a fake, faking an identity misrepresentation thing. So I'm just curious. I'm not asking for names. I'm not a cop. I'm not asking you to narc out. But is that a thing? I got a fake ID in college. It was so bad they misspelled the name of the city that I wanted. Did I use it?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's the point of a fake ID. Now, I was in college. I was 18, but I think we've also moved ahead. I think young people do things now at a younger age than others did in the past.
I don't know anyone from Townsend who has one.
I don't know anyone from
people from other schools that do.
But some of these other characters from other places.
Yes.
Interesting.
I think Townsend's very good. It's very good, but it's very
they're good
very
at
much so,
rules, and they follow.
Very good at rules. Very good at rules. Extremely good at rules.
Take great pleasure in following rules. Some students want more rules than others. I feel like my class, I'm not a big rule person, but then I feel like that gives some students comfort.
But also Townsend kids don't have time to do any of this stuff.
Why, are you busy? You got stuff going on?
I wonder why we're here on
Some
Friday.
people find the
project due on Monday.
Well, yes.
Well, at least you got Monday off. Now I was just thinking out loud. We have no school on Monday, so that's a good thing. So you can work on it. Anyway, enough with this. I was just curious about the fake ID thing because
you thought you get an answer out of us.
No, I'm just a
name.
Alan said he would give me the names later. No. Anyway, this woman gives a fake ID so that Layla can go to Egypt. We are back in Egypt. Layla and Harrow, I think, are two of the big characters, obviously of the show, but within this. We learn a lot more about them. Wren, any thoughts on Layla's backstory, Layla herself?
I love the Layla character. I haven't read the Moon Knight comics, but just her, we eventually learn she's Scarlet Scarab. Just the development between her and Mark and his whole protecting her thing, and she just wants to know what's going on. And then can I skip to a different scene? Involving, I don't remember if it's episode 3 or 4, but they're about to enter the tomb, and Steven is talking to Layla, and they kiss, and then Steven turns into Mark, and Mark that is my
happy about this.
I love their dynamic.
How do you I just want to ask, what do you think about that? That Steven, Mark, Layla thing? Who do you think? Because she married Mark, but Steven and her
but they're different people.
They are different people, but then they're the same person.
It's a love triangle, but with the same. There's no third edge. It's the same. Well, for me, it's. I think Layla is just a really intriguing character. She doesn't have all the answers in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So
she's strong too.
Yeah, so you're forced to. Yes. She's very multifaceted. So she has this she's very tough. She wants to do things for the greater good. But then she also has this interesting backstory. She's trying to repair. So she's a lot of sides to her. It's a complex character, and the actress, who I don't remember her name, but she manages to encapsulate all very well. It's all within this one personality.
I think I think it's a well-written character. It's not like a flat character that I think you usually see with like the Marvel, like the Marvel girl, I guess, like it's not just one
It's
side.
true.
Okay, they've fixed it up in recent years, I think, but I
Yeah.
think definitely like in like early Marvel times with like
Black Widow.
and
Yeah.
like, Tony Stark's wife.
Even some
Pepper
of the shows.
Potts.
Pepper Potts.
Even
like
just the
Pepper
name.
Potts.
Yeah, just
like
the
come
name.
on,
There's
guys.
there used to be no like moral dilemma with them, and I feel like Layla, since she has one about returning all the objects and like with Arthur Harrow,
I just think she's
it
like,
makes her a
she's
lovable
a person.
character.
She's a person.
Yeah.
Like as she should be.
But some of the MCU heroines or whatever, right? They also are just not as like in its shows. They're not as you have 6 episodes to do, but they're just not as interesting as Layla. I watched 2 full episodes, right? And I found myself more interested in this character than I have in some of these other, woman characters from all 6, 7, or 8 episodes.
Right.
Moon
With the
Knight in
exception of
general
WandaVision.
just does that well. Like I love Oscar Isaac, and in this,
Right.
Steven and Mark, and then what's the other Jake?
Jake.
The eventually.
Yeah.
But I
Did not get to that.
that was so great. Like that's the same guy playing 2 guys, and you
Yeah.
can see like the difference in
Such a
mannerism and
talented
accent and everything.
So that ends up being like really like I think for the whole series the highlight, but then within these, so you could really break it down. I wrote it down where like he's essentially playing up to 4 people
right.
in this,
It's
right?
so
Because we have
good.
Mark, we have Steven, he has Khonshu, where he acts out when they're
Right.
kind of in front of the gods. We'll see Jake later. But then looking at my notes, I
We
feel
sort
like I
of
had someone
see
else
him a
with the
little
addition
bit.
of it's just and he's so good and just the way he's able to have these performances where then
And switch.
switch is absolutely
Just
switch in the
like
moment,
that.
but then also like the way he's acting against himself, right? Where
Right.
like when they're filming these things when he's Mark, he knows that like Steven will also be there in some of these and how they interact with each other. It's super impressive. I was already so happy. I said in the last episode, I always get annoyed when British actors pull off American accents really well. I feel like I get duped sometimes.
His
but
was okay.
well,
It was pretty good though.
He's British?
He's not
no,
British.
no.
He's
So he's not
American.
British. So he's the opposite. So
Yeah.
he was. I think he was born in Guatemala, and then American, and then he does. Yeah, it is. It's a basic British
okay.
accent.
It's a,
I
it's
guess.
a bit over exaggerated, but I think it's pretty good. It's not like what you listen to, like what,
Yeah.
or he's uneven. He gets it right. It's just very, very British, like
But
stereotype.
I think it's like good because you need to see the stark differences between the characters. Like I think you need to enunciate some things when you're trying to play 2 people with 1 person.
And it would be if you see it in. I think it's 5 when they kind of reveal the background behind it that he's playing. Steven is born out of like this
Right,
adventure
Indiana
movie, this
Jones.
Indiana Jones, but
That's
he's
at
kind
the
of
end of
like
this,
British.
at the
So
end of
yeah,
4.
so that's in there. Oh yeah, that's when they're in the hospital,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
That they
That
keep
was an
talking
amazing
about.
The
Weird hospital
ward or
ones.
whatever.
I mean, that's a whole other thing.
Different
So,
thing.
just in general, what is real here? Like, so that was even when I was
That was
watching
my
this, I was like, okay, so what is brilliant about this? Have you seen The Usual Suspects? Have you ever seen The
Yes.
Usual Suspects?
Yes.
No.
If you haven't, you should. You should do Tomato Meter. I know it's an old movie, but
It's a very good movie.
basically not giving away anything about The Usual Suspects, but the reveal that we get when Steven is in the doctor's office, that like basically everything that had been happening is represented in this office. But the whole time, like, could this just be like what's happening? The whole thing is just essentially what's happening in the mind, and none of
Yes.
it's real. And I
That's-
still don't know.
That's
Right.
the same Wait, have you seen all of it? No?
I've seen all of it.
Okay,
now.
that's
Yeah.
the same reaction we had when my dad and I first watched it, and we were watching it when it first came out, so it was like weekly.
Right.
So we had the whole week, and we were like trying to figure it out, looking up what happened in the comics,
Yeah.
and like when the hippo shows up, we were like, has he been here this whole time? Like
Yeah.
I wanted it not to be true, but now that I've seen it twice, it all makes sense.
It probably does take a second
Yeah,
viewing
you gotta
to
watch
really
it for a
get
second time. I enjoyed it even more the second time
Okay.
because then you could pinpoint what's going on.
There's a recent movie with Anthony Hopkins, like the father. So I watched it because he was very good, and I heard. But I think this is sort of like that movie where they put you with all his waking up out of nowhere, and then you don't know what's going on. You're being put in Mark's shoes in this case, right? Because he himself doesn't understand what's real and what's not real. He thinks he knows something, But then it backfires on him, and he's sort of put through this whole test. He now has to realize that it wasn't this way. It's something else.
Mm-hmm.
So they're putting you in the character's shoes, which is so good. Like, you're not watching from what's his name, Harold's point of view,
Yep.
Yeah.
which you see this guy doing and stuff. It's not as fun, but you put it right in his shoes.
I think Harrow is very compelling. as
So,
a character.
The
I was
first
just-
scene of the whole show.
Absolutely. It's just so off-putting the way it starts with the
Yeah.
broken glass. And so,
He's
Angeline, that's what I was going to say. Talk to us about Harrow. You're about to hear, but let's just formally frame that out. What are you thinking?
He's such a wonderful villainous character. He's not even fully. You can sympathize with him. And he's so good at being creepy. He's so not creepy.
No,
it's
It's
unsettling.
it's
like,
an
you feel
off-putting
like,
feel
you
with
feel
him.
like,
Absolutely.
especially him and Khonshu.
Yeah.
Like you think you're on like the good guy's side, right? But like remember that one scene when Khonshu gets like in episode 3, right? He gets back in the his little stone cage
Yeah.
statue, right? And then like Khonshu, no, and then Harrow whispers to him like, "I am only this because you have tormented me
Yes.
so." And I was like, "Oh my gosh."
And then
That was
you
chilling.
you
Like,
kind of
oh
get
my
that
God.
that he's driven by this almost
Right,
vendetta
right,
against
right.
Khonshu
And
for
he
what he's
seems
done.
like, I don't know. And you know how you pointed out how Mark and Steven was ill? I think he himself is also like in a way like very
Definitely.
is
Mark's
very
going through
ill.
what Harrow went through
Right.
to become the villain right now.
Right.
Yeah.
And so
Mm.
you see that
He
fight.
has so much depth in his character. He's
Yeah.
Have you seen all of them? Did you watch
Yeah,
all the
all the
episodes? So then even the post-credit scene at the end, and we won't, you gotta watch the rest of it. You
Oh,
gotta watch
oh,
the rest of it.
okay.
We won't give it away. But yeah, I mean Ethan Hawke's a great actor.
That's
Right.
what I was just
Anyway,
gonna say.
Yeah.
He brings that character to life. When I was watching I watched 3 and 4 in full. To me, whenever he walked in and he's like, I don't know, he kind of drifted in.
right.
yes, his
I-
physical mannerisms.
slithers
Yeah.
His
It's very
his physical
good.
acting.
It's very good.
Snake.
Personally, I like when he was the doctor,
Mm.
because that to me was much more like
The psychiatrist.
it was different, because then you see 2 different sides.
Mhm.
I just found it weird how Harold just like kind of came out of nowhere. Like he just always somehow like Layla's doing her thing in the tomb, and then he just boop, he's there.
He's just
And
there.
that was a little bit weird. Like, how'd you get there? You know? But I'm guessing it makes sense. It's just, to me, the doctor is much more like
him
compelling.
as
It's a
like
different side.
he almost seems like he's like controlling the place. Like he's controlling like
Well, that's essentially what
Mark's.
it
It is,
yeah.
right?
It makes a
Like,
lot of sense when you realize that this is all Mark's fantasies. It makes sense. That's where I was going with. The Harrow is just that, like, I'm not gonna say generic villain, not a generic villain, but he has a very villainy type of, because it's what you would imagine.
When he was like messing with Mark's head, like, oh, like, don't you know, like, you're sick, like, you need help, like, we're getting you help
Yeah.
right now. Like, that was like, oh my god, he's so irritating, like, in such a good way. Like, when even in episode 3, like, when, you know, all the gods were judging, like, Khonshu, and he was like, hey, like, this guy's sick, you know, like, can't you see he's sick?
Yeah.
Like, he was so good at, like, oh.
And he manipulates them
Right.
real quickly into it, which when I was watching, I was like, that's it. Like, you're just going to take his word for it. But I guess Khonshu had enough of a reputation to
Right.
not be trusted going forward.
I also feel like Harrow had so much experience with the gods. He probably went through something similar to this when he was under Khonshu's, you know, avatar.
when he was his avatar.
Yeah. So he knew how to manipulate the gods to
Yeah.
get them to understand.
I think one of the best parts of these 2 episodes, but for me, was just the visuals within this.
Yes.
So much. So I wrote down just a list of all different things, ranging from just literally the set design of like the marketplaces in Cairo, or the
Right, yeah.
pyramids,
Oh
or
my
the
gosh,
desert, or the
right.
Great Pyramid. And when you read about it, is that, you know, the executive producer who also directed 4 episodes is a man named Mohammed Diab,
I saw that.
if I hopefully pronounce that, and he's like an Egyptian actor and producer, and just speaks to like what probably I've said, like, a lot of people love this show amongst
Right,
students. This was
right.
the one that was like,
Yeah.
when you do a Moon Knight, when you do a Moon Knight. And I think like
Best.
part of that success, I think, will probably be like the authenticity or the approach that they took to it, where it wasn't just going to be like these outsiders coming in and doing a story about Egypt and Egyptian culture, but you were going to have Egyptian voices kind of
Right.
shaping it
Yeah.
as
and,
well.
And honestly, I wouldn't. It's so disconnected from the MCU. I'm gonna go back to my
That's what
like.
I
That's a
think
thing
great
about
thing,
it,
though.
too.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
It would do well by itself.
Right. It doesn't need to be part of Marvel. That's what it's like. That's why I really like this show because Marvel characters have been tired. They've been exhausted.
Well, and
sorry, but I
No,
feel
it's
like
fine.
She's right.
Say your
They're a
opinion.
little bit. They're
Okay,
getting
okay,
annoying.
we can agree on this.
And it literally isn't like it. There's almost
Right.
no
There's
connection to
nothing.
anything.
And
There's a passing
and I
reference
hope
to
they don't
Madripoor,
connect.
which is
I don't-
which is in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which is like the kind of like a Wild West place where I need to have my notes in front of me. It's in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but it's the only thing that I picked up from watching all these things that like actually connects back to
I'm
the
glad
MCU.
there's nothing.
Right. It's its own separate thing. It's so much better that way.
Yeah.
I can't. I would not be able to take it if it had like. And by the way, Captain America can't come.
Oh yeah, they have like a
You
little
know,
they have like a Captain America poster somewhere. Like I
Right.
hate
Do they
that so
actually?
much.
No.
But, like,
if they would,
it's
that would be so annoying.
Just the overall look of the show is
Right.
so different from anything
'Cause it's
else
not
that the
set in New
MCU
York,
has
too,
done.
where-
Yeah.
Arguably, have you seen Werewolf by Night yet?
No,
That one is arguably similar.
Which is
You
funny
should
'cause
watch it.
because that was the
It's
like
pretty good.
recommended when I finished
I
Moon
like
Knight.
that
The
one.
I got that
recommended
too.
was
Yeah. But just like the set and all of the precise little details put into it. Like in the beginning of the show, or I'll say something from this episode because we're doing this episode. Just like in the hospital, I guess we're calling it.
Yeah.
Was it the cupcakes? There were cupcakes. There was like
They were
just
handing
the
them out to
doctor
the
room looks like
yeah.
the tomb, and they have those
They have the canopic
jars,
jars
the
and
canopic
everything. Yeah,
jars.
absolutely.
Just so cool.
And that's what I loved,
Intricate.
like to that Usual Suspects connection. That were all these details were like, oh my god, which then makes you think. I still don't know what's real. I can
Yeah.
still sit here and
Right.
still be kind of.
Well, the hippo aspect of it was actually shown in one of the first episodes in the museum gift shop area.
Oh,
Like,
really?
there's little hippos.
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
she's scanning the hippos.
Yeah, and also his room has his fish tank has like the sunken ship
Okay,
that
is then
I had
what
to,
the one
I
that
had to
they're.
I only realized
I-
these when I watched it again.
I have a hot take a little bit. I sort of wish this show was not in the MCU. Like it had nothing to do with
it's
the MCU.
not
doesn't.
though.
No. I mean,
But you don't want
technically-
no Marvel
like, I
connection
want
at all.
Yeah.
nothing. And
Yeah,
here's
yeah,
here's
yeah.
why, right? The show could have been a lot more like trippy, a lot more weird. It could have
Yeah.
completely.
I would have liked.
and
it
then
to be
and then also
bonkers.
there's you can it doesn't it's not like it's not super Marvel-y, but at the same time you can still tell it is a Marvel Studios production.
Honestly,
There are those
Can
action
you,
scenes.
though?
Yeah, there are those action scenes.
I can.
There are
There's that-
jump scares in the 4th episode.
I like
Like
that one
Marvel
moment.
doesn't do that.
There
I
is
think
some uniqueness,
It's
but
less produced. It's less artificial. I can see
Robotic.
why you would still think that it
It is
has a
also
little
the
bit of cheesiness, but
because Marvel has a standard. Like there's a formula, and this one sort of deviates from it a little bit, but it's still within it. They have a tried and true formula, but sometimes it's nice to go out of it if you're doing it in a good way. And many shows do that, and Moon Knight can genuinely could be some sort of like
I'm excited
action
for season
adventure.
2.
It's completely
They
separate.
need to make a season 2.
Well, I mean, it
They
totally
obviously
sets
are.
up for it, especially the way it
Yeah.
ends.
It's
I
a
mean,
But it was put on all the award shows as limited series.
yeah, it was.
They do that a lot, and then they have a second season.
But like,
I'm surprised that Oscar Isaac wasn't. Was he not
He
nominated for
should've
anything?
been.
Oh, was he
He
nominated?
should've.
I've never
not
paid
for
attention
any of
to
the
awards.
big ones.
But like, I mean, he's
Emmy, though, he
so
was.
good in it. Like, it really is like, and Ethan Hawke's great
He's
too.
so
good.
But I mean, just again, playing when you play 3 or 4 different characters well in something, it's super impressive.
right.
I'm
Like a
an
snap
Oscar
into
Isaac
someone else.
fan. And then he could also do the comedy aspect, as we saw in
Right.
Star Wars. I don't know if any of you saw.
Oh no, but I think just like Steven's funny.
Well, yeah,
sometimes. Like,
Steven.
Steven
but
is
like, that's a
funny.
different type
just
of
a little
funny.
British guy.
I sort of watched a little bit ahead because actually when the 4th episode ended, that twist,
Mm-hmm.
that really like before I was watching
You
it, and I
had
think
to
a lot of
watch it.
episode 4 is like Marvel action, and
Jump
then
scare?
no, but that was good, but just action, right? And then it gets this twist, and I was like, okay, that's it. I gotta see it like at least a little bit. I had to go to sleep, but a little more. And then I was watching it, and there's this one moment. I know it's sort of next week's thing or the
That's
next
all right.
episode, but there's one moment where he starts punching himself. I don't know what it was.
Right,
He's
right.
he's
Yeah.
within like reality, and
it
it's
really
and
feels
he-
like
and he's doing.
It's
And
very
I
real.
was like,
some other person is punching him.
and my
Yeah.
dad doesn't know what this is, but he just sort of like was pacing around the house, and he walked in the room as that was happening. Like, yeah, you watched some serious acting, and I'm like, yeah, and I kind of don't
Yeah.
expect that
Right.
from Marvel at this point. Like I don't expect it like that.
Well, and that speaks to like a couple other things that make it non-MCU-ish. Is one, just the role that mental illness plays in this, right? The idea that like this trauma has triggered this like dissociative identity disorder. That like, so we don't see that anywhere. And also shout out, is he the first Jewish superhero? Like, so
He is,
that
I
pops
noticed
up
that.
later, you know,
Yeah.
when in that 5th episode when you
Yeah.
know they're sitting Shiva and with the various deaths that have taken place. But I think even just that mental illness is because, I mean, especially how traditionally heroes are viewed. That is, you know, no weakness is not usually.
Right.
So
Well,
everyone has their
right.
weakness, but it's not a defining feature of a superhero.
Right,
Maybe.
because he's afraid of losing Steven as well.
Yeah.
I want to liken it to The Dark Knight, which is my favorite movie of all
Great
time, and
movie.
it happens.
Dark Knight.
Yes, it happens to be a superhero
That
movie.
makes sense. This makes sense.
What's wrong
How
with
does
the
it
Dark
make-
Knight's a great
I'm
movie.
not saying that,
I
but I'm
think
just
it's-
saying
I
like
think-
it fits his like
I have a very generic favorite movie. I think Dark Knight is a lot of people's.
What's your
top-
favorite movie
ever.
ever? Just put you on the spot. Or if you give me something in your top 3.
Top 3, you're gonna hate me. La La Land.
It's such
I
a
never
good movie.
saw it. I'm sure
it's
it's
an
good.
amazing
I
movie.
never
just
saw it.
watched
It's
it.
a very good
You
movie.
have never seen La La Land.
No, I would probably like it too. I'm not like I know people who are like
Oh,
I'm not watching that
Mr.
movie. I don't need to
McCaughey.
see the
You
singing
have
and the
to-
dancing
no,
and
no,
the
no,
big
no,
Joseph
no,
Gordon-Levitt fan,
no,
talented
no,
dude.
no. You have.
I'll see it. I'll see it.
But
I'm not
my-
against it.
Just
It's a
watched it
3-day
for the
weekend,
first
Mr. McCaughey.
time. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
a-
we're
it's a-
all
watch it.
you
I have
know
so
what?
many
It's
movies
a
I
very
feel
good
like.
movie. And
No, but it's
so to liken to The Dark Knight, which is also sort of dark in a way, but Dark Knight deviated from a DC form, from a superhero formula, right? And
Right.
Batman there is clearly weak because of his attraction to, what's her name? I forgot. her
Harley
name.
Quinn?
No.
I haven't seen it. I don't know.
His
The-
girlfriend, his
yes.
old girlfriend who's now dating Two-Face,
Yeah,
right?
Maggie
That's a
Gyllenhaal.
weakness.
I'll
He's
just say
very,
Maggie Gyllenhaal.
yeah. He's definitely like
Dark
he
Knight
wants to return to some sort of former version of his life, and it's not explicit, but it's there. And same thing here. When you make the hero 3-dimensional, it's cool.
yeah.
Like I love Iron Man, but he was sometimes a tiny bit like this is his personality. This is it. Like,
I
he's
agree.
A
I
techie
agree. It's just
billionaire,
kind
and
of
he
like
wants
black and
it.
white, just like, oh, I'm Iron Man and I have a lot of money and I'm gonna, and every time it's just like.
He also had a lot more movies to have a character development, though.
But
He
never-
did though.
Moon
No, he
Knight
did.
has
Did effectively.
6 hours.
He did. At the end of Endgame, he sacrificed himself. He started off as, but in between,
Spoiler.
Wait, I forgot.
Yeah.
everyone's seen it by
I
now.
would assume if
Everyone's,
they're watching
died.
this.
but in
Oh, I
between
cried
all
over
of
that.
that, in
I
between
didn't
all of
watch
that, it's
it.
a little
I
stagnant.
was
Yeah.
gonna say you're a real enigma with Marvel. I don't get you. You're like
I used to be
it's
a-
terrible. Also, I cried when
But
Iron
I
Man died.
cry
I agree,
very
like,
easily.
yeah.
I
No, I
think
don't
if you
cry.
have a really good setup and you establish that people have relationships
I
with
cried
each
when
other,
Iron Man died.
and you kill off one of the characters that Spider-Man had a relationship. Like I was like, oh, that kid's like basically an orphan. Like,
I think the
you know?
end of No Way Home is so sad.
Spider-Man.
Like
It's very good.
so
It is
sad
very
in
good.
terms
Peter
of just like.
Parker. Yeah.
Just a second on The Dark Knight. Even if you think the movie itself is fine, like the Heath Ledger performance,
It's
just
Oh, okay.
raises
It's
the
not
whole-
just
But
But
fine.
that like,
But it's
even-
not just
But
fine.
it was a
It's like
commentary on society.
yeah, it's a great movie.
Right.
What I was trying to say, I was a huge Marvel fan from like 2018 to
This makes
2019,
sense.
and then when COVID started, I sort of like got away from it, right?
Thank
I
God.
sort of got away from it, and I kind of like appreciate other things more. I'm so cool with it, like I'll catch up and whatever, right? But I sort of understand its problems and its flaws or whatever. I'm not like ignorant to it. But when Iron Man died, I sobbed, like I was sobbing like, uncontrollably.
right.
And No Way Home, when I watched that, I was also shocked because it wasn't just oops, Spider-Man saved the day, you know, like the other two. And then this one made me happy again for like the MCU in general, just like had hope.
Yeah.
Was because it's so different. What made me lose hope in the MCU was Falcon and Winter Soldier. I'm just gonna touch on it
I
briefly.
agree,
I did not like that one. It was very actiony, a little sloppy, very like one-dimensional, and it's just like they call it a
Right.
thriller. It's not really a thriller.
Like what is up
No.
with
It's not
Marvel
really a
putting out
thriller.
these like little like like I don't know, like these little like shows.
The shows?
Like I'm not with them.
This
I
is
don't-
one of the best ones, and I have
One
only
This
This
seen
is
like 2
the
episodes.
best one. There is no
I liked WandaVision
competition.
up until
It's
the
good.
end.
I like one.
Yeah,
She-Hulk.
well.
I
No.
never
No.
seen
She-Hulk
that one.
We're not
I
talking
haven't
about
even
that.
seen that
No,
one
no.
at all. I saw a couple clips. I
It
said
was
nope.
like
nope.
Yeah.
I saw that they got I don't know, that was
The end
like
was-
the popular pop
Yeah.
reference.
No,
like,
not doing it. Okay, so one of the Allen rules is we gotta keep it brief. We can't go long. We can't
because-
drag. So
Each
that's a
it's
good.
Each podcast their own.
So that's a good transition to now. What is your feedback for the 27 here? You've been a guest. I'm sure you haven't listened or watched it before, but yeah,
No.
What do we think?
I listened to something. That is,
Right. Which one did you listen to?
I think it was not yours. Not yours.
Okay.
It was definitely not yours. So I think it's really good. It has like separate from Tomato Meter. It's a very different vibe, and I think you're like the star of your podcast.
I think that's the
Which
problem. Is that it's,
Why?
it's
I think-
too teacher centered. You know?
But it's not. You're just.
I
like
think
a
that
guy.
it's like. You want me to be completely honest?
That's what we're here for, Alan. Maybe
God.
I don't know.
I can't-
Irene's
For your
grimacing,
ears.
having to deal with me and this podcast.
Me personally, I kind of distance myself, my preference for it, and you just trying to focus on who you're going to cater it to. So we chose to cater it to teenagers, and hopefully if we can expand it in terms of scope, that we can get the minds of more teenagers. But for some reason, adults with nothing better to do have been commenting on
Oh my
our
God, my
YouTube
favorite
channel.
comment. I just have to highlight my favorite
Okay.
comment. It was a hate comment. It was not a hate comment. It was a comment under our Pinocchio review in which we brought in Alan as a guest.
Yes.
And it said something like, "Wow."
You need the comment.
No, he said I said that
context.
the dolls were creepy.
Yeah, he said
And I
that the
kept
dolls
saying,
were creepy.
and it's like, oh, what, the dolls are creepy? What a wimp! What a loser!
Wow.
What a
loser.
wimpy loser.
I mean, that should be a badge of honor for
That's
someone
my
to
favorite-
call you a
That's
wimp
my favorite
online.
comment of
That's,
all time.
I was laughing, and I looked at it,
'Cause
and
I
for
think,
some reason I felt
like-
bad. Like,
And you know
why
what?
would you do
They,
that?
you know,
Just
they
spend the time.
commented. You got them to
No,
comment.
but also-
you
That-
got that
Right,
interaction.
but also,
That's the
guys,
point,
like,
though.
That
like,
is.
the choice of there's so many insults. There's so many insults available to you within the English
Alan's a
vocabulary.
We-
But wimp? Like that's
What
a
a wimp.
60-year-old like sitting at home and going like, "What a wimpy loser." Like,
That
that
was
was
But
great.
then there were other hate comments. This one has no hate comments,
Right.
but whatever.
Well, look, the idea is when you are putting yourself out there, when you are creating this content, you're supposed to get a reaction. Oftentimes, a tree falls in the forest and no one's there,
Right.
thought with some of our work here. But, you know, you get the reaction. You got it. Okay, so thank you for that. Appreciate that. Appreciate all of you coming on. We're excited to talk about the rest of Moon Knight. We'll do that next week. We'll talk about episodes 5 and 6. Any final words on Moon Knight before we go?
they should
I like it.
succeed from Marvel.
Marvel's
Yeah, they
getting
should-
less
they should,
black
Sound
and
like you're in
white.
an
like
AP US
Soviet-
history
like, yeah,
class
like-
right now.
Like
Yeah.
South Carolina was in South Carolina, just to get out. Be like, we're not part of you
I
anymore.
think they
Do
should
their own
announce
thing.
their
They're done.
because they would thrive.
It could be like
Moon Knight fans are not Marvel fans. I'm a Moon Knight fan and not a Marvel.
Like the
fan.
The only
boys are like-
problem is it's the comic.
But it's a comic, yeah.
Okay, whatever.
It
And
was
there's a lot more
originally
coming with
Marvel.
Jake, too, from
Yes.
the third identity,
Yes.
who
Season
lives
2.
in the head.
Please, Marvel, if you're seeing this, season 2.
Season
right
2.
now.
don't
Get it.
make it Marvel-esque.
Get
Do
it.
not make it Marvel-esque.
Get it done. So we are the 27. You can find us on Instagram at the 27THHS. We are part of the Classic Critic. Go check out that website. I didn't write it down because I always say it. It's so long.
That's
It's
okay.
critic.thhhsclassic.com. Go listen to Operation Tomato Meter. Go watch Operation Tomato Meter for their wonderful production. See Alan's work. See Angeline's
All of our work.
Venom. See it all. Am I wrong? That's not
my truth, my blind.
fair enough. Well, thank you for coming on. We appreciate it. We'll be back next week. We got Andre joining us for episodes 5 and 6 of Moon Knight. But for now, that's it. We'll see everyone next week on the 27th. Take care.